Welcome back to Kitchen Protocol. Thank you for joining us once more. If you've been following the series in the past couple of weeks, you'll remember that we've been learning specific skills throughout each of the videos that we've put out. So today we're going to be layering those skills and integrating them so we can create a little bit more of a complex dish. Today's dish is pretty well known. It was famously designed by a very, very talented and skilled chef, Michelin star rated chef. His name is Thomas Keller, and he was a creative mind behind this dish that was put out and made really famous worldwide by this movie that we all saw. It was a Pixar movie, and it's called Ratatouille. So join us, and we'll go through the steps. This recipe is basically comprised of three main sections. Those three sections would be basically the base that we're going to be creating, which is a sauce that will hold all of the rest of our ingredients. Then there is the slicing of these ingredients and layering of them in a very pretty layout that we'll work on. And then there is a vinaigrette that will develop to complement our dish in the very end. So join us and we'll go through each of the steps. We'll drive through the ingredients and we'll jump straight in. Before we start, just to go through the list of our ingredients, we're going to need 2 bell peppers. I'm using a yellow and a red one. You can use 2 yellows, 2 reds, not a big deal. Now we're going to be using Roma tomatoes. The reason of that is they're quite elongated and they're very firm and they would hold their shape when we're cooking them. We're going to use some summer squash or yellow squash. We will be using 1 small onion, 2 cloves of garlic. We have them here. A sprig of thyme. We will have 2 zucchinis, approximately, and we have 2 Japanese eggplants. Those are similar in shape and width, so the cut and the slices of each of the vegetables are even throughout, and we can line them up and arrange them in a nice manner. We will also need some salt and pepper, and from there, we can just get started. So for this stage, we're going to start with our peppers because we're going to have to roast them for quite a bit. So we're going to preheat our oven at 450 degrees, and then we're going to halve and seed the bell peppers so we can lay them on a tray and have them roast slowly until the skin is blackened, and we can then let them rest so we can remove it and I find it very easy to remove the seeds if you remove the top where the stem is first, and then you can have them. And the rest we can use a paring knife to remove the pith and any remaining seeds. So at this point, you should have the 2 halves of your peppers ready to go. And then we're just going to put them in the oven probably for around 10-15 minutes until they are roasted and charred. I'll do a little cleanup here. So we're going to lay them in our tray, and from there into the oven they go until they are roasted. We'll come back to them in a minute. Now, while the peppers are roasting, we're going to quickly shock our tomatoes in boiling water to be able to peel them. So the easiest way apparently to do this is just to make a tiny cut on the top of a tomato just across, and that will allow us to peel the skin back once it's boiled. So I'm going to prepare them this way, and I will put them in the boiling water in a second. While the water for our tomatoes is coming up to a boil, I'm going to continue with the prep for the rest of the sauce. So we're going to be having one of the onions. I'm going to cut it into probably 1/4 inch cubes. Same thing, we're going to do a mince with our garlic, and that'll allow us to put them in a pan, sweat them out a little bit, and then integrate the tomatoes when they're completely soft, scooped, and diced. Now that our peppers are roasted, we're going to cover them with tinfoil and let them steam for a few minutes so that the skin becomes loose and it's easier to peel. So now that we've boiled our tomatoes for probably 10-15 seconds, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain the water and allow them to cool down. So I'm going to pass them to a ice bath that I have prepared here to shock them and stop the cooking, which will also help us loosen the skin so we can peel them off easily. I'm going to peel the tomatoes now that they've been in the ice bath for a second, so that'll just very easily peel off the skin and allow me to handle them much easier than if I hadn't boiled them before. Skin should come off pretty easily. It should help. Here we go. For our onions, we're going to dice them in probably 1/4 inch cubes. Remove that outer layer. And now for our garlic, we're going to do very, very thin mince. So what we can do is I like to have them and then slice along. And then you can do very small mince. That will allow it to disintegrate in the sauce and you can't feel it. So there's no bite to it. Do the rest. Same thing with the rest. If it's not fine enough, you can definitely run your knife a couple of times through it, and that should do the trick. There you have it. Quick and easy. Now, our peppers have been steaming for a bit, so that should have loosened the skin, and it should make them really, really easy to peel. So they're also a little cooler now. It's easier to handle them, but you can see how easy the skin comes off. It is really, really simple to peel, and we'll end up with a very clean, soft, cooked meat for the pepper that we're going to use. So we're going to remove the skin of all of them, and we're going to process them in a way that I'll show you in a second. So now that we have our chopped onion, our minced garlic, and our cooled down peeled peppers, we're going to do a rough chop, and this will allow us to integrate them into the sauce. So I'm going to be basically roughly julienning them and chopping them into little cubes. And from here, we'll go over to the stove now that we have everything ready, and we'll start to integrate them into the final product, which is going to be our base. I haven't mentioned the name of this sauce. This sauce is called a Piperade, or Piperade. So I guess that's very French. So now we have our cooled down, roasted yellow and red peppers. We have our minced garlic. We have our onions and our peeled tomatoes. So I think we're ready to start integrating them all into the sauce. So one last step before going to the stove and starting to cook, we need to halve our tomatoes. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove the core, so that way we're left with exclusively the meat of the tomato, not the seeds and all of the water content in it. So for that, we're going to use a spoon, and we're just going to shell and core the tomatoes. So that's all the water, and will remain. The only thing that should remain is the flesh of the tomato. You can also do it with a paring knife. Should be simple. Just removing the core of the tomato, going in a circular manner like that, and removing the core. And once we've cored them, we can dispose of the seeds, core, and we're going to chop them into very small cubes so we can integrate them into our sauce. In case you don't have a uh, large number of tomatoes available, you can replace this type of tomatoes with canned tomatoes. Canned chopped tomatoes would do just fine. Perfect. Now we have all our tomatoes and we're ready to start integrating our sauce. So let's go. So here's where the precision aspect of this recipe comes in. We're going to have to slice all of our ingredients, all the squash, the zucchini, the eggplant, and the tomatoes in a very consistent way. So it'll have to be very thin, and hopefully all of our layers and all of our stacking that we'll do a little bit later will look even. So that'll allow us to arrange them in the tray or the cooking mold that we will use to bake them in a very even manner and have it look very pretty, as you know how it was presented initially in the movie. So what I will do is I'll start cutting. You can use a mandolin, of course, but in this case, I think it takes more time. And if we're trying to practice some precision and knife skills, we can use some of this practice to do that. So what I'm going to do is start with very thin slices until the body of the eggplant becomes kind of the same width. And then I'll probably discard this tiny ones. I'll use them for the filling in the center of the plate at the end. But from now until the end of the chopping, I will continue down in a very even way. You see they're probably about less than a quarter of an inch slices. So I'll continue going down very slow and controlled way. So to start integrating our sauce, we're going to heat up 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and then we're going to start integrating all of our chopped ingredients that we had prepared earlier. So now that our oil is a little bit warm, it's ready to start caramelizing our onions slowly. We're going to add them until they become translucent. Remove any peels that you didn't remove initially. You can do better than I do. Perfect. So now we're going to start caramelizing our onion, sauteing it slowly until it becomes translucent and fragrant. It should take a couple of minutes. And at that time, we're going to integrate our garlic as well. If it looks like you need a little bit more olive oil, don't be afraid to add a little more. It will be equally as tasty, probably even better. Now the onions are starting to be a little translucent, so we're going to go in with our garlic that we previously minced for around 30 seconds. And at that point, we will start integrating the rest of our ingredients. Tomatoes, roasted peppers, herbs, and we'll season with salt and pepper. We're going to let this mix together, become really fragrant. The kitchen smells amazing again. So this is the base of our sauce. Now it's been around 30 seconds since the garlic went in, so we're going to integrate our chopped tomatoes and start reducing the amount of water that they have. Even though we actually removed the core and the seeds and most of the water that they had, they are a very juicy vegetable, so we'll break down and release a lot of water. Same with the onions. So that starts building the sauce's base. We'll let them simmer there for probably a minute or two until it dries out a little bit, and then we'll add the rest. When you see that the water starts to dry out, that's the right time to start adding our chopped peppers, the red one as well as the yellow one that we roasted earlier, and start integrating that into the rest of the sauce. We're going to let those flavors marry for a couple of minutes, and then we'll add the herbs, season, and let it simmer. So now we are going to season with salt. You can season generously, it'll continue to cook, and then we'll try and taste, see how it is going. We'll also add some pepper, and we're going to add our thyme that we picked earlier to make the mix a little fragrant as well. We're going to let all of our vegetables break down as much as we can, and we don't have to worry about them roasting a little bit. We're going to blend this into a sauce that'll be the base of our dish. So it's okay if they start to break down. We're going to continue to roast this until its texture is jammy, which we're getting very close to. And then when that's ready, we're going to reserve it, let it cool down a little bit so we can move it over to the blender and proceed with the blending of the ingredients into a smooth sauce. Perfect. Now we have the base of our sauce ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to reserve it until it cools down. And from there, we are going to put it in the blender, blend it until smooth, and we're going to use it to line the base of our dish where we're going to bake the rest of our ingredients. Excellent. Now our sauce base is cooled down, so I'll transfer it to a blender container, blender jar, and we are going to blend it until smooth. It's important to keep everything flowing into the jar and not on the counter. Perfect. So now we will start blending slowly. We'll start pulsing it and figure out when it's the right texture for us to stop. So now our oven is heating up to 275 degrees. So we're going to layer the bottom of our dish with a very, very even, thin layer of the sauce. Having a layer like this in the bottom of our dish will help us stack all of the other ingredients when we start arranging them around the dish so they stick and they don't move around much. So what we're going to do is try to arrange our vegetables in the same order around the dish, and we'll stack them, uh, trying to figure out if we can find some of them that are kind of the same thickness. So we can start doing that, and then we'll go around the dish. And now that we have our final version of the dish with the ingredients arranged, bake it covered for 1.5 hours at 275 Fahrenheit. Then increase the temperature of your oven to 400 Fahrenheit and uncover it. Continue to bake for 15 minutes. Right before putting it in the oven, we're going to drizzle it lightly with some olive oil so it helps with the caramelization. And in we go. While we wait for the dish to continue baking, we probably have around 15 minutes more. I will be completing the vinaigrette that I mentioned earlier. So for that, we reserved just a tablespoon or tablespoon and a half of the sauce, the Piperade sauce that we prepared earlier. So I'm going to mix that into a bowl. Then I have 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Then we have 1.5 teaspoons of balsamic vinegar, which will give it a nice acidity and brightness. And we have a pinch of pepper and a pinch of salt to balance it out. And to that, we're going to whisk. That looks a little bit like that. And we're going to use this to dress our ratatouille serving. So there you have it. This is the end result, and I'll show you how it looks like from up close. The vegetables are caramelized. They still hold their shape. So I think we're ready to start thinking of plating. Let's move on to that. So we'll be taking a couple of sections of our dish and we'll plate them inside using a mold. This is a 3.25 inch circular mold. You can get them for like cookie use or baking, and it'll serve the purpose of just aligning everything in a round manner so we can actually stack it up nicely, and then we'll remove it in the end. So with a spatula and very carefully, we're going to lift some sections of our stack and we're going to line them up against the walls of the mold, like so. And we'll continue down until we have filled the mold all around. Remove the mold very carefully so the stack remains untouched. And there you have it. Perfectly lined up ratatouille. This looks delicious. Now the only thing left to do is use the vinaigrette that we had made earlier to drizzle it around the plate. We're going to use it loosely here. We're just going to drizzle around and add a little on top. And since we're honoring Thomas Keller's recipe here and the movie as well, we can't forget of the one chive to top it up. So now, next step is to taste it. Let's give it a try here. Mmm. Mmm. The vegetables are still holding their shape. The texture is very soft and creamy. The sauce helps put everything together, pull all of the flavors together. It actually grew in flavor once it was baked. I think it's delicious. Thank you for joining us again. Let us know if you make it. See how it goes for you, if you like the taste, or if you would change anything. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next one.